All right, thank you so much for joining us today. We're truly thrilled to have you. We are the Office of Programs to Enhance Neuroscience Workforce Diversity within the National Institutes of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. We are very pleased to welcome you to the Open Stage webinar series. This is a targeted outreach effort for our diverse NIH and neuroscience community to learn about NIH and NINDS programs and staff. This month especially, we're very excited to spotlight the life trajectories of our Hispanic and Latin/Latinx NIH staff members in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items. So I'm going to go back a second. So a few meeting reminders. All attendees are going to be muted. So please submit your questions using the Q&A function, or if you have any comments, feel free to use the chat. In the Q&A box, you can upvote questions and we'll make sure to ask them at the end of the webinar. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded and it will be transcribed and archived on our website. You can enable closed captions under live transcript at the bottom of your screen. And we are going to be sharing so many resources. We're going to be sharing all of the slides, again, the recording after the webinar. So if you registered for this event, you'll get an email with all of the resources and more afterwards, including all of the panelist emails. So if you want to reach out to anybody after the webinar, we'll give you all the information to do so. So please do stay connected with us. Feel free to email us if you have any questions. And with that, I'll pass it off to Dr. Recinos to get us started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alva Recinos. I'm a foreign medical graduate, currently working as a health program specialist at NINDS. I hope you all enjoyed the music while you were waiting. It was the instrumental version of a very popular song called Los Caminos de la Vida. And yes, that is actually the name of our webinar, with a very real message about the paths of life not always being what you expect when you're a kid. And how you work through them, taking the scenic path of life is pretty much the entire message of the song. So I wanted to share that with y'all. And to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, the Hispanic or Latin/Latinx ambassadors and allies to NINDS or H.O.L.A NINDS Employee Resource Group welcomes you to Los Caminos de la Vida, Pathways to NIH, which is a panel discussion highlighting the diverse and often unexpected paths that have led our panelists to their current roles at NIH. NIH is a place where science thrives, dreams and aspirations are realized, and careers are nurtured. As we navigate this discussion, our panelists will explore their narratives deeply, sharing their origins and the pivotal moments that shaped their journeys to NIH. They will offer us a glimpse into their daily roles, showcasing the breadth and depth of the opportunities available, as well as share valuable resources that can guide aspiring professionals to carve out their pathways to NIH. Whether you're a student, a young professional, or someone considering a career pivot, we invite you to listen actively, engage with your panelists, for today's discussion could possibly be the starting point of your pathway to NIH. So without further ado, let's begin our journey through Los Caminos de la Vida. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelist. Our first speaker is from the country that gave me the opportunity to study and practice medicine. She works on main campus and is part of the intramural division of NIH. In Dr. H.O.L.'s group, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Eunice Dominguez Martin. I apologize for the mispronunciation.
Thank you very much, Alva, for the introduction. And thank you also to all the organizers for inviting me and to H.O.L.A because they are doing a great effort and for organizing all these events. I'm Eunice Dominguez. I'm a visiting postdoctoral fellow at Dr. Richard H.O.L.A lab at NINDS. And I'm from Mexico, the neighbor country. Mexico, it's a really diverse country. We have a big population of around 126 million people, And in our country, in addition to to Spanish, 68 native languages are spoken, showing how diverse is our country. We have 35 of the World Heritage Sites in our country, and even our food is considered representative of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, showing how rich and diverse is our culture. Specifically, I was born in Mexico City, which used to be a lake, as you can see in this image. Now this lake it doesn't exist that much anymore. And it's a huge city. 22 million people inhabit this tremendous city, which I think is like a city made of other cities. As you can see in these pictures, we still have some pieces of the old lake that live with colonial buildings and some new buildings where a lot of, where we have all the Mexican government centered that, and also a lot of business. So when I was asked to think where did my journey to the NIH started, I realized it started a long time ago. When I was little, and my family, mainly my mother and my grandmother, encouraged my curiosity for science and learning. My grandmother could go to school only for 2 years, but she told me since I was very little that those were the best 2 years of her life because she learned to read and write. And that made her gain freedom, the freedom of learning and understanding the world. And she shared that with me since I was very little, and with my mother and my uncle and aunts. And from that, I became very interested in chemistry and in biology, and I was very lucky that my parents were able to give me, since I was a little kid, this chemistry and microscope set so I could start playing science. And now you can see some pictures of me playing real science and with real microscopes. Then sometime later, I was admitted at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM, where I was very lucky to be part of the bachelor program in basic biomedical research, or Licenciatura en Investigación Biomédica Básica, which is a very special program where students can join for each of the years that the bachelor lasts a different research lab and be part of the research that is done in those labs. So I was able to learn, since I was very young, different techniques and to use very different organisms like yeast. And then I did a master in biochemistry, and I was also very lucky to be admitted in a very special shared program between the UNAM in Mexico and the Autonomous University of Madrid in Spain. In this shared program, in addition to be able to learn new techniques, I was able to attend to conferences. And in one of these scientific conferences is where I met my current mentor, Richard H.O.L.A. And that opened me the opportunity to come as a postdoc at NINDS. One of the issues in Latin America is that our universities doesn't have enough funding for us to travel to conferences. So I was really lucky to be in this program, because otherwise it would have been impossible for me to attend possibly to a conference. Later, when I arrived at NINDS, I was granted with a postdoctoral fellow from the Pew Trust that you can see here. They give you money so you can have 2 years of training as a postdoc in the US, and then they give you money so you can start your own lab in Latin America. So I really encourage to students in Latin America that want to pursue a career in science to check the information about this grant. So what do I do at NINDS? As I told you, I work at Dr. Richard H.O.L.A. group, where we study hereditary early onset Parkinson's disease and its relationship to a cellular process called autophagy, which is a process that I like to tell people that cells use to degrade intracellular material to maintain the homeostasis by doing some tiny vesicles that are going to grab intracellular material to degrade it. And I want to tell people that it's like as if cells could make like tiny little tacos to grab some material that they are going to eat to use in another things and nourish possibly also the cells. Specifically, we study how the cells degrade the organelles that are in charge of generating energy in the cells, which are the mitochondria. And when those organelles are damaged, they should be cleared from the cell. And this process is called mitophagy. And I explore specifically the relationship between this process and the inflammatory response. And I'm also developing new methodologies to study this process in a non-animal model. All this with the aim to understand better how this process works and how it doesn't work in neurological disorders, mainly in Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative disorders, so we can generate new or novel therapies to treat these diseases. So with all of this, I would like to thank you to listening to my story. I'll leave you here some of the resources, the programs that I talk about, the Pew Latin American Fellow Program webpage, and some free conferences that some students can attend. And if you have any further questions, you can find my email here. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eunice. Up next, our next speaker is a colleague in the extramural division of NINDS and is also a health program specialist. Please help me welcome Dr. Heidi Matos, Galicia.
Thank you, Alva. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Heidi or Heidi. Either way works. I grew up listening both ways. And let me tell you about my story. Oops. So I am from the beautiful Caribbean island of Puerto Rico, specifically from a small surf town on the West Coast called Rincon, which in my very unbiased opinion is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And that's just like #facts. And I have to say that for me, my career trajectory actually started in high school. So I come from underprivileged family. My parents were teenagers. No one had higher education within my family, but I had an interest in science, and I went to a public magnet school that had a focus on STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is the place where I first really saw myself like, this is something that people do. This is where I learned how to apply to college a little bit better and navigate those career trajectories. And also where I decided that I wanted to go into neuroscience, which is the career that I followed through with. So after high school, I went to University in Puerto Rico and studied psychology. After getting my bachelor's degree, this is what like my career path takes a little bit of a weird turn. I graduated in 2008, and you might remember that this is in the middle of the Great Recession. And I couldn't go directly into graduate school because I couldn't find a graduate program that could afford me moving into there. So all financial aid, stipends, student loans all start once you're a student and you're physically in the institution. But I didn't have access to afford moving, finding an apartment, security deposit, all those kind of things. So hard reality hit me, and I just looked for a job to survive. So I started working in a casino in 2008, and I was even lucky to find a job. I was really grateful for that, and I learned very valuable life lessons in that experience. But of course, me being a very proactive person, I looked to opportunities that I could continue the path that I really wanted to, which was the path within neuroscience. And it just so happened that a little bit of luck always kind of strikes. In 2009, this was a brand new at the time master program in neuroscience in the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. So I joined the program at the same time that I was a full-time student, full-time employee. It was hard. I made it. I have no memory of that time. And as I was navigating when I was about to graduate from my master program, a new PhD program in Puerto Rico opened in UCC, Universidad Central del Caribe, or Caribbean Central University. So I applied, and as I'm navigating, how am I going to move and get settled, I learned that the university actually had a program from NINDS. It was a specialized neuroscience research program that I could get a stipend and my tuition paid. And I didn't know that this was a thing that was possible. So sign me up. I quit my job and became a full-time student. And I felt like I was back on track for my career in science. So during my PhD, I worked studying the mechanisms of synaptic transmission and a genetic model of epilepsy. This will become important later. But halfway to my studies, my advisor got a job at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. So if I wanted to finish, I had to move with her, and so I did. This time a little bit more prepared financially and with some support to make that move. So I remain a student at UCC because I honestly didn't want to lose some of the credits, but I did half of my PhD work at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan, which was a clash in terms of weather. Coming from the Caribbean to a very, very cold place and dark. And after graduating from my PhD, I decided to pursue a postdoc, which is a rather traditional path. And I focused on studying ion channels and the development of brain circuits that drive social behaviors. And I worked at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, DC. But during my postdoc, I also had a collaboration with the University of Michigan. So I divided my time between both institutions. So that's a little bit of the roadmap of what I've been. Now, as I was preparing to leave my postdoc, I was navigating a couple of career opportunities, and I stumbled upon a LinkedIn job opportunity from NINDS. That was something that described something that I would want to do, what I was looking for. And it was a team that worked with ion channels, synapses and circuits, and was within the team that worked with epilepsy. And I felt like, wow, this couldn't fit better even if I wrote that job description myself. So I applied through USA Jobs, and after 4 weeks, I get an email from USA Jobs saying that I wasn't qualified for the position. And I was like, okay, ouch. I wonder what specific thing they are looking for. So again, I tried to be very proactive, and I looked in LinkedIn who works at NINDS, and I reached out to several people. And I was looking to answer just one particular question. Since I wasn't in rush to leave my postdoc, I just wanted to know how I could improve myself as a candidate so that whenever another opportunity like that comes from, I am more competitive. And there was a wonderful person that responded to me of the name of Jackie Ward, and I asked 10 minutes. We ended up talking for an hour, and the gist of the conversation was, you probably didn't navigate USA Jobs appropriately. So we talked for an hour. I got a lot of tips on how to actually navigate USA Jobs. And through that conversation, me asking follow-up questions about what's the 9 to 5 of this job, she connected me with the hiring manager of that position. So that's how a lot of networking started for me. That networking 2 weeks turns into months of me just talking to people. At that point, I already knew I wanted to work at NINDS, and I knew the kind of position that I wanted. But government tends to be a little bit slow, and like when things can come out. So an opportunity to join the National Academies arose. And I took it because even though I wanted to work at NINDS, I understood that may take a little bit of time. And also I figured that I could get some experience already working in a non-academic job, especially this is 2020, 2021, during the pandemic. This is my first time working 100% remote. So I loved it. That was a very valuable experience as well. But I already knew that the people that I talked to and like the job description, I definitely wanted to come to NINDS. And as I continued talking to people and with my interest, an opportunity arose to join NINDS as a contractor, which I did at the beginning of 2021. So I joined NINDS as a contractor through Columbus Technologies and Services, which is essentially filling a very similar position. And then after being a contractor for some time, the opportunity, like a new USA Jobs announcement opened, and I had the opportunity, now knowing how to navigate USA Jobs, to transition from a contracting role into a federal full-time position. And that's the position that I currently hold. As Alva said, I am a health program specialist at NINDS. And the gist of what I do is I take proposed projects that academics write and come to NIH, that come to our institute, and I assess them if they fit the mission of NINDS, our institute. And I assess their fit to the different programs and program specialties that we have. I also provide scientific support to identify with external and internal stakeholders, gaps and opportunities in our fields of expertise. I do analysis, whether it's scientific or administrative, to inform future programs or policy decisions. I also help in committees and working groups where I can provide my programmatic and scientific expertise. And also I work with program directors to help make sure that administration of grants it's done in a timely manner. So that is essentially the short version of my story. And here are some of the resources that helped me along the way to navigate that. Happy to answer any questions, and please reach out.
Thanks so much, Heidi. All right, our next speaker is the reason that we're all here today. She had the vision and recruited me to speak to the Open team to make this event possible. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Claudia Figueroa-Romero.
Thank you, Alva, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm very happy to share with you my path to NIH. I also was born in Mexico City. I grew up there. I was 19 when my family decided to move to the United States. When I was in Mexico, I had just started the university, also at the UNAM. And when we moved to the States, I was too old to go to high school, but my English was not good enough to go to college. So, see if I can, yeah. So this is a drawing that my uncle did when I was getting my PhD. And this can be applied to any stage in my life, basically, where we are faced to different obstacles and dangers. But I think at the end, they are opportunities that take us to the places where we are right now. So because my English was not that great, I had to start, oh, I think I'm missing a couple of things. Anyway, so I had to start taking ESL classes when we moved to Chula Vista, California, which is south of San Diego and is north of the border with Tijuana. After 1 year, I transferred to a community college and then to San Diego State University. San Diego SDSU was a great place because I had great mentorship. They gave me resources facilitated getting resources such as the MARC program, which back then was the Minority Access to Research Careers. Now I think it's called Maximize Access to Research Careers, that provided stipend, tuition, books, and also to be exposed to research. After I got my bachelor's in biology and a certificate in Spanish English translations, I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan to get my PhD. I went to graduate school in the laboratory of Dr. Ann Wojtek. And then I did a postdoc with her afterwards, and then moved for a second postdoc, also at U of M, in the laboratory of Dr. Eva Feldman in the neurology department, where I studied mostly ALS and environmental factors leading to the disease. I stayed as a team scientist in her laboratory for 15 years. And I went from a postdoc all the way to associate research scientist. I tend to be an introvert, and it was very comfortable for me to be in that position because I communicated science, but I didn't have to deal with too many people, and be social, I guess. And but then I realized that I needed to expand and try to work out my fears and apply for the Center for Health and Research Transformation Fellowship, which gave me it opened my eyes to health policy. It was a really, really good experience. I have to mention that on the way, when I was doing my graduate school, I had 2 kids, which you can see it as another obstacle or danger. But I think at the end, it ended up being giving me, it balanced my life so that I could do other things besides just working. Based on the fellowship, I decided to apply to the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship, which took me to NIH. So what do I do right now? I was placed at the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke in the Division of Translational Research in the Office of the Neural Exposome and Toxicology, which supports research addressing internal and external exposures affecting the nervous system. This was a really good match with my background at U of M. And some of the things I have been supporting the office with is program planning and development, performing analysis to evaluate and prioritize research, doing outreach by helping with workshops, symposium, webinars such as this one, participating in working groups, not just within the Institute, but also with other federal agencies. And as part of the AAAS fellowship, I participate in professional development activities as well as other fellowship activities like mentoring the incoming fellows. Oops, sorry. This is a very busy slide, but I just wanted to give you the information about the fellowship. This is a picture last year for the 50th class of the fellowship. And here I am right here in the front because I'm short. And just a few points to touch here is that in terms of eligibility for the fellowship, you need to be a US citizen. And for most of the fields, you need to hold a doctorate degree. There are 4 different areas that you can apply to. The largest one is the executive branch. That's where NIH is held. In terms of benefits, you have a salary, health insurance, funds of professional development activities, engagement with policy experts. And I think the most valuable thing is the networking, especially for somebody like me that avoids crowds. But it has been an amazing experience. In terms of important dates, for next year class, the application closes on November 1st. There's 3 parts of the application process where there's an online part. If you become a semi-finalist, you have to write a 1-page brief memo and an interview, and then a final interview where you are placed in an office. This is a temporary position. And after this is over, you have to either go back to your academic position if you're already in an academic position, or apply for another federal government position or industry. So these are just resources that I have put together about this different places where I have gone, the institutions where I have gone through, and my contact information. Please feel free to contact me with any questions that you may have. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Claudia.
Oops.
Our next speaker is actually Dr. Justin Benavidez. He's traveling for work at this very moment and doesn't have the best signal. So we actually have a pre-recorded message that Ana will be sharing with us. He should be available to chime in later for the Q&A session. So Ana, take it away.
Hey everyone, super happy to be here to present about my career path to NIH. Yeah, so let's get right into it. This is my first time recording a presentation ahead of time like this, so please bear with me. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Connecticut. My dad is from New Mexico. My mom was also born and raised in Connecticut. So yeah, my Latino heritage comes from my dad's side. They have lived in New Mexico for, as far back as I could find, since the Mexican-American War, when the U.S. annexed that part of North America. So yeah, I was raised in Connecticut. I was the first member of my family to go to college, so I didn't really know, like where to look or what I should major in. So I ended up going to the state school, UConn, and I ended up starting off as an undecided major. But pretty soon I discovered that I had an interest in biology and that I was pretty good in those classes. So I changed to a biology major. For a hot minute, I was thinking about being a doctor, but very quickly found out that I wasn't interested in doing that long term. So towards the end of my undergraduate degree, I asked a lot of my professors, what does somebody actually do with a biology degree? And that's when one of them told me that a PhD is actually paid for by the university. So they pay you a stipend and they cover your tuition, which is something that I did not know when I started and was very important to me as somebody who didn't have a lot of money to spend on a graduate degree. So yeah, in my senior year of college, I decided, hey, let's try and get into a PhD program. I was a bit late applying, so I ended up having to take a gap year where I worked a part-time job and spent a lot of my time applying to PhD programs. And fortunately, and very luckily, and I'm very grateful that I was accepted to the Columbia University PhD program in biological sciences. Yeah, so I started at Columbia, and while I was there, I was in the lab of Iva Greenwald. She works on C. elegans, which is a nematode, a model organism, and she's mostly a developmental biologist. I won't go too deep into my specific research while I was there, but I just have this slide that has the title of the two papers that I was on while I was in the Greenwald lab at Columbia. One is a second author, one is a first author. And then that third picture on the left there is just a picture of all the lab members who I'm still very close with today. Had an incredible mentor in Iva, had an incredible team of folks working with me who are all incredible scientists, many of whom are still in academia or, went into industry and all kinds of other very impressive career paths. But towards the end of my PhD, which aligned with the pandemic, I started thinking, what do I really want to do with my career? And, for a long time, when I entered grad school, I wanted to be a PI. That was my career goal. But after experiencing, kind of the grant process, the research process, and what it was like to work in academia for the 7 years that I was at Columbia, I think I decided maybe I didn't want to keep doing that. And that's no shade to folks in the audience who are still in academics or still in academic labs. But I didn't really like being on the treadmill of having to apply for funding so you can write more papers, so you can apply for more funding. That didn't seem appealing to me long term. And in addition to that, I had a lot of interests at Columbia that weren't directly related to research, right? So I was interested in the administration of the graduate program at Columbia. I also got involved in a lot of, racial justice and racial equity initiatives at Columbia. I was involved with recruitment of students to the graduate program. So I was hoping that perhaps I could kind of incorporate my enjoyment of the administrative side of things with my scientific expertise. And that's how I came across the PMF program. And PMF stands for Presidential Management Fellows Program. So this is a program run by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. And essentially it's a leadership development program where they take folks who have advanced degrees, so like a master's degree, a PhD, MPH, anything like that, and they try to bring them into government. So it's a great way, if you don't have any experience in government service, to kind of get your foot in the door and get started. And the fellowships can be at any executive branch agency. So obviously I ended up doing mine at NIH, but you could also do something like CDC, Department of State, Department of Justice, any of these places, they all have PMFs. And it's a great opportunity to get experience. So yeah, as I mentioned, the only requirement is that you have an advanced degree. When I applied, the only requirement was that I take kind of an online assessment, which is a little bit like an easier SAT. And I just had to submit my resume, which proved that I had my degree, or that I was scheduled to have my degree by the time that the fellowship would start. So it's a pretty simple application process. I'm happy to answer more questions about the application later during the Q&A, or you can message me personally about it if you want. So I applied to the PMF in 2020. It was actually October 2020. And I got a call back from the National Cancer Institute, and I had a great interview with them, and they offered me a job early 2021. I graduated from my PhD at Columbia in June of 2021, and then in July, I began my Presidential Management Fellowship. So every fellowship at the PMF program is a little bit different. Mine involved doing a bunch of rotations. So again, I don't have the time really to be giving specific details about each of these rotations, but just so you have an idea of the type of work that I did rotations in all of these offices at the National Cancer Institute. First one was at the Office of Communications and Public Liaison. I also worked at the Office of Government and Congressional Relations. Those are both very communications heavy rotations, which was something I was super interested in coming out of grad school. And then I did a few more science-focused rotations, one at DCCPS, or the Division for Cancer Control and Population Sciences. And then my final rotation was at the Division of Cancer Biology, which is where I ended up, actually, following my fellowship. I also notably did one external rotation at CDC at a center that no longer exists because of CDC's reorganization. That's typically a requirement of the PMF, is that you do one rotation outside of your home institute. Yeah, so I guess as a take-home message, my duties during this 2-year fellowship were super varied. These rotations were 3 to 6 months long. I was staying on my toes the entire time, and it was a great change of pace from having one research project during my PhD for 7 years. So I ended up after my fellowship converting, which is, the jargon for beginning a real permanent job at NCI. I ended up converting into a position at the Division of Cancer Biology as a program director. So let me get into a few of my responsibilities as a program director. So the way that I see it, there's really 3 main categories of responsibilities when it comes to being a program director. The first is that you're a liaison between the PIs. These are people who apply to NCI for funding, and the other people who are on the grant side of things. So these are peer reviewers. These are, other PIs that review the grants, and also grant specialists who process the grants once the application comes in and after review is over. So for example, let's say that a PI, submits an application and it's not reviewed well. They get the summary statement back from submitting the grant, and they don't really understand some of the comments in the summary statement. Well, they have the option to reach out to me, the program director who's been assigned to this grant, and we can kind of discuss what was in the summary statement, and I can hopefully give them a little bit more context and maybe some advice about whether to resubmit, whether it's possible that they could get funding based on that review score, and things like that. So, we basically are helping PIs figure out how to best navigate the complicated NIH grant system. So that's a very short description of the first category here. Second category is developing new program concepts. So we're very fortunate as a program director to be able to come up with, new concepts in the field to push a specific field in a direction, right? So as a program director, you read a lot of applications, you see what kind of research is being done, and you also might notice gaps in the research. And in order to kind of fill those gaps to make sure that NIH's money is going to be the most effective that it can be, you can write notices of funding opportunity where you describe a specific type of science and you say, hey, why don't you apply for funding in this specific field? Now, there's a whole process by which this is cleared within division leadership and then NCI leadership. But to me, this is one of the most exciting things that you can do as a program director, is try to kind of have a small hand in shaping what kind of science is done by researchers. And then the third category is intentionally vague. If you ask 10 program directors what they do in their job, you'll probably get 10 different answers. And that's because there's all kinds of different things that you become involved in during your time as a program director. So, a great example is that you might participate in a bunch of inter-NCI committees where you talk about things like policy, how best to promote data sharing among your PIs, what types of programs are working and what types of programs are not working. Specifically for me, something that I focus on is I'm a genomic program administrator. So whenever a PI submits a grant, I have to make sure that that person is compliant when it comes to NIH's data sharing policies. Again, lots of technicalities there. I can get into more details if you're curious, but yeah, there's all kinds of little responsibilities like that that program directors also have to deal with in their jobs. So I hope that was a pretty good summary of being a program director. And I don't have too much time left. So I just want to talk a little bit about opportunities. So this seminar is coming at a great time because the PNF application is actually open right now until September 25th. So the link to apply is here in the slides, which I'm assuming will be shared. And of course, if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask me in the Q&A portion of the seminar, or you can just email me directly at my email, which is just my name, justin.benavidez@nih.gov. All right, thank you. Got that done on my first try.
All right. So again, thanks, Justin, for your recorded session. So our next two speakers have a role in an area near and dear to my heart, because I actually worked as an interpreter upon my return to the US after finishing medical school. It's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, which is Ms. Brenda Robles.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event. My name is Brenda Robles. I am a certified medical interpreter and language interpreter program manager at the NIH Clinical Center, which is the hospital portion of the NIH. Our department is run through the social work department. So I was born and raised in California, Los Angeles, California. I'm the eldest daughter of three to immigrant parents from Guatemala. So my father and my mother immigrated from Guatemala in the late 60s, seeking opportunities to live the American dream in the United States. They settled in California. They faced all the challenges that immigrants to a new country face. And one of them, probably the biggest one, was not speaking the language. So in that, I became very aware as a young child of all the challenges around communication, especially for my parents, because I saw them struggle. And so I think very early on, I developed this advocacy role where I wanted to be of service, and I wanted to be that voice for people that had challenges around speaking English. So as such, I was the first in my family to speak English. I was the first to attend a private college preparatory high school. The funny story behind that is that as all young girls of Hispanic culture dream, I was dreaming of having my quinceañera, and my dad had set off a little bit of money to be able to celebrate that special day in my life. And it so turned out that when I was in high school, right before high school, I was in junior high, a group of some young ladies came from a local high school that was a college prep high school. And they did a short presentation. And when I was done seeing the presentation, I thought, that's where I want to go to school, a college prep high school that's going to open the possibilities for me. So I went back to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, this is where I want to go to school. And it turned out that it was something like $2,000 a year, which was just a little above what my father had saved up for my quinceañera. And I said, I don't want it anymore. I want to go to school there. And so that's what I ended up doing. That college prep high school unlocked the capacity for me to be able to dream and to dream big. I attended there, and from there, I was able to attend the University of California, Riverside, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in in French literature and international relations. During my time that I was in school there, my third year in college, I applied to be an education abroad scholar, and I actually did get that. And so I was able to study in Poitiers, France, where I was able to practice my French aptitudes in France. It's crazy because in the trajectory of life, you may start out somewhere and end up somewhere else. So I invite you to keep an open mind to that, because I'm living proof of that. I then, after I finished college, I was able to, I met my husband. I worked at Universal Studios, and I worked there at the very beginning while I was attending high school. And that opened the possibility of being able to deal and interact with people from all over the world. And I'm an introvert by nature. And so I was able to develop that skill set of being able to communicate with people. And so I was able to use my French and my Spanish and my English, and it was just amazing. From that point, I attended the university, finished there, and I worked at the university while I was going to school because my parents unfortunately could not afford college education for me. So I worked in the summers and in all my holidays at Universal Studios, raised enough money to be able to pay for next year's school. And when I completed all my schooling and I finished and I got my degree, I was still hungry for something where I could work as an interpreter. And a program opened up at the University of California through their extension program. And it was called a Certificate in Professional Interpretation and Translation, which I thought, this is so me. So they opened up the application process. There were more than 100 applicants. They only selected 20 people to attend the program. And out of those 20 people, only 9 of us graduated. But we were fierce. We pursued, and this is what I wanted to do. In the interpreting field, there are 3 areas where you can go into. You can go into the legal field to serve as an interpreter, and you can also go into the medical field, which is what I ended up doing. And thirdly, you can work in the administrative sector in a school or in any government office where they provide interpretation services. So what I ended up doing is I had married by then. I had my daughter, and she was 1 year old. I applied to this program, and I got in to the UCR extension program. And the people that were involved in this program, we were all adults that were kind of reinventing ourselves, reinventing our career path. And so I was in the program for 1 year. We were trained in simultaneous, consecutive, and sight translation. It was a very rigorous program, but it prepared me and gave me the faith in myself to be able to sign up for the national board exam, to be able to become a certified medical interpreter. I now serve as a certified medical interpreter program manager. I have 27 years of experience in language service delivery in healthcare, cultural and linguistic advocacy, and LEP minority populations. So how did I get to NIH? So in 2006, I saw an ad in usajobs.gov, and I applied to usajobs.gov. Now,
Do you want me to advance?
please advance. Yep. Thank you. So I applied through usajobs.gov, and I didn't know anything about the GS system, knew nothing about it. Can we go one slide before this? One before that. There we are. So I applied to the program, and I knew nothing about usajobs.gov. I knew nothing about the GS system. It was totally new to me. And so what I ended up doing was I was working now in California in a county hospital. So I had to take a pay reduction to come and work here, but I wanted to work here. And this was my dream, to work for the NIH. So I did. And so I applied, I got the job as a GS9/11. I was in that job. And eventually within 2 years, I was able to apply to be the program manager as the previous manager had retired. And so I was promoted to a GS12 position. I sought every teaching and network opportunity because, again, I was an introvert by nature, but I had to get my program out there. And I do see that there is a tremendous amount of value in self-promotion. And it's not just because it's important to get who you are and what you do and what your skills and aptitudes are. It's important for people to recognize those things. And also that brings recognition to your program, to what you represent. So the networking opportunities were very important. I also started framing communication as a matter of patient safety and how important it is for our limited English proficient populations to truly understand what they're participating in when they're participating in research. So these were crucial elements to my career growth journey. I was a GS-12 for 11 years. And so there were times in my career here at NIH where I felt a little stuck. But I believed and I kept working hard at what I was doing. And it was under the guidance and the mentorship of the chief of social work, who really took an interest and mentored me and said, hey, Brenda, what is it, what is the value of the expertise you bring here? What do the interpreters do? What do they bring to the table? And that caused our position descriptions to be reviewed, evaluated, and eventually they were upgraded by the Office of Personnel Management and Human Resources. So advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. It's so important that we advocate for others, but it's important that we advocate for ourselves as well. Next screen, please. So presently, I serve as the Language Interpreter Program Manager at the NIH Clinical Center. We serve the linguistic and cultural needs of limited English proficient patients in over 150 languages. So people come from all over the world to receive the care that they need from the clinical center. And it is pivotal that when they come here, they understand the risks, the benefits, everything they're participating in, so that we can truly be transparent and so that they can have that same access to the healthcare and to the better healthcare outcomes. One of the most gratifying parts of my job is that I train monolingual providers in effective cross-cultural medicine. I talk about informed consents, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, minority populations and healthcare disparities, and the role of medical interpreters as part of the interdisciplinary team. All in all, because I was so in tune with my parents' challenges, it's amazing what sometimes starts off as a little interest and turns into a career. But I'm proud to practice my vocation. I'm proud that I'm able to lend a voice to people who don't have a voice or who feel marginalized or misunderstood. One day when I was preparing for a presentation and I was thinking about talking to people about the value of promotion, the value of networking, I woke up in the middle of the night and I sat up in my bed and I thought, the KIND model. And this is something that I came up with many years ago, but the KIND model stands for the following. K stands for know thyself. It is important for us to recognize what our innate talents, skills, and aptitudes are, because that is where our fervor comes from. That is where we can serve our communities. It is important to invest in ourselves and invest in others. When we think of the word investment, we think of resources and money and finances. It's not just about that. It is about mentorship. It is about guidance. It is about molding future generations to be able to have the opportunities and even create new opportunities for them. The N stands for networking. And I spent a lot of my presentation talking about the value of networking, expanding your horizons and touching other people and being able to learn and grow and teach in those areas. And then the value of development, D. So development has to do with developing ourselves and developing others. It is never late to move in the trajectory of your career in a different direction and to truly believe in the things that make you you and how you can contribute to your communities. I love the slogan of EDI right now with regard to Hispanic Heritage Month. We are all, we are one. And truly, individually, we can shine as gems, but collectively, we are a force that can be reckoned with. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present here today. I truly consider it an honor, and I will be around to answer any questions you might have. With regard to certification as a medical interpreter, I can also provide resources to that end because there is a lot of rigorous study that has to happen, and it's a whole new profession that is out there that is being recognized as it should be. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brenda. That was wonderful. And as I mentioned earlier, there is 2 interpreters that will be presenting today. So our next speaker is Valerie Vélez Toro.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Valerie Vélez Toro. I'm one of the certified medical interpreters here at the Clinical Center, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy to follow Brenda, who is my manager, my supervisor, my mentor, and a lot of what she said, obviously, I will be talking about that too. Alrighty, so a little bit about me. I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I'm Puerto Rican. I moved here in 2017. So I've been there. I was there my whole life, my little island. Just so to go straight kind of to my studies, I wanted to be a doctor, specifically a pediatric endocrinologist, because I always had a lot of problems with my endocrine system when I was younger. And so I figured, you know what, I'm going to be a doctor. And so I went into the University of Puerto Rico in Bayamón, and I completed a bachelor's degree in human biology. But during my studies there, I realized that I preferred to be studying languages than actually studying like organic chemistry, studying biochemistry. I would do it, I would study it, but then I would close the book and I was like, let me study some Korean for a little bit. Let me sit and practice my French for a little bit. I've always loved languages. And so every time I would bring out like the organic chemistry book, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to graduate. Let's do it. I started it. I'm going to finish it. But by that last year, my bachelor's degree, I said, you know what? I just want to keep going with languages. So I graduated and I took a different route. I said, I want to be a translator because I always thought that was so cool, especially because at the university, my textbooks were in English, but my classes were in Spanish. And I was just kind of like, do people not translate these books or anything? So that's what I wanted to do. So I went into the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras and I started a translation degree. During that time there, about a year later, I found out about Haku. But first, before that, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for my studies? So I actually became a paralegal. And during the time as a paralegal, I would do some document translations. I was working with a lot of people who were trying to get citizenship and all that sort of thing. And I think that's where my passion to help, especially people who do not speak English, kind of awoken. And so I started my master's in translation, and then I saw the opportunity to become a Haku intern. Haku means Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. And I applied for the internship program. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about what I do now and then how I got there. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm a certified medical interpreter, specifically in Spanish. So what we do is literally interpret with our patients, patients who speak Spanish at the clinical center with the providers. We go to the appointments, we're there, we interpret for the provider, for the patient, we become conduit of information. We also bridge cultural gaps. It's not just kind of speaking, we have to do a lot of kind of like body language analysis and a lot of kind of, it's just more than that, right? But it's just so much fun. But also aside from that, there's a lot of studying that goes on, a lot of practice that goes on, because as you all know, the things that we talk about at the clinical center aren't your everyday, kind of ER service, it's all research and all that. So there's a lot of studying. We practice our simultaneous interpreting. Consecutive interpreting is sight translation. Simultaneous is doing interpreting at the same time as the patient and the provider. And that's what we specialize here. Consecutive is kind of waiting for the provider or the patient to stop speaking and then interpret what they're saying. And we also do virtual and in-person modalities. Okay, so my internship with Haku was here at the NIH as a medical interpreter intern in the social work department. And then during my internship, I got certified as a medical interpreter because I figured it just sounded really cool. But I had intentions to go back to Puerto Rico. I didn't know what I was going to do with that because you don't really need to be an interpreter in Puerto Rico, but I still wanted to do it. My heart knew that it wanted to do it, but I did not know how it was going to happen. But later on in life, I was going to have the opportunity to become a full-time employee at the NIH. So the timing was perfect because I had gotten certified. I had been an intern for a year, and I became a federal employee in May of 2018. So a little bit more about HACU. Like I said, it's a Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. And HACU is actually the only national association representing existing and emerging Hispanic serving institutions. Okay, so the program is a paid internship for undergrad and grad students. There are 3 separate sessions, as you can see here. Now, after the pandemic, they have virtual, hybrid, and in-person formats, full-time and part-time positions, and these are some of the benefits that the interns have. And the interns are not only at the NIH, it's for different federal agencies. And I actually have the list here. These are different federal agency partners, and the eligibility, you don't necessarily have to be Hispanic, but the university that kind of provides the internship program has to be a part of like majorly Hispanic serving institutions. I think it's a 25% of their students have to be Hispanic. Okay, and then we have that there, so you can always look back if you wanted to see what other partners participate. And then this is the link in case someone wants to read more information about the internship and applying for the internship. And this is my email. Please feel free to reach out for more information about either the internship or my job as a medical interpreter. It would be lovely to meet anybody who's interested and just talk a little bit more. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my experience here.
Thank you so much, Valerie. That was great. And last but not least, we have another individual that was instrumental in getting this event finalized. From the Office of the Director and the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Department, we have Patricia Sauceda Kramer.
Thank you, Alva. Hello, everyone. So as you just heard, I'm Patricia Sauceda Kramer, and I'm going to share a little bit about my journey to the NIH. So I was born in Sinaloa, Mexico, a place that's been infamously put on the map for its drug trafficking and violence. But it's also a beautiful coastal area of Mexico with fertile terrain and strong agricultural communities. I come from a long line of mechanics, people who love to tinker with things, take things apart, observe those mechanisms, and then put them back together. My father was always tinkering with the car, and as a consequence, my brother learned mechanics at a very young age. He often created devices from taking our toys apart and using the pieces to build something else. It resulted in much yelling and tears and fighting, but eventually we learned that this was just the way it was going to be with my brother. As a young adult, I knew how to change my own oil and conduct basic maintenance on our family vehicles, even helping my brother change out the transmission from standard to automatic on my very first car, a Honda Civic 1989. To this day, my father and my brother are the 2 people that I call whenever I have issues with my car or have questions about something regarding mechanics. In 2005, I joined the United States Army, and it's not going to shock you to hear that my chosen occupation was a tank mechanic. I knew my time serving the military would be short, and joining during the Iraq War seemed like the perfect time to do this. I finished my time with the Army in December of 2010 to pursue a clinical psychology degree. I was fascinated by the mental health issues that resulted as a consequence of war. Experienced some of these firsthand and have always been interested in history and specifically war history. As I left the Army, I moved to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania to pursue my degree. I founded a club called Band of Brothers And this was a club dedicated to veterans who were transitioning from military service to civilian life. I felt a great deal of difficulty in my transition, and I felt that there had to be others battling with these same issues. I wanted to create a community for these individuals. Over the course of my pursuit in my degree of psychology, I raised a young boy, I divorced, I remarried. My second husband was also military. He served as an active duty psychologist for the Navy. So my role was that of military spouse, mother, and student. Navigating these roles was no easy feat. I attended a total of 5 different schools in my undergrad, each time moving wherever the Navy took us. Our final location was Naples, Italy, and we returned to the United States, where I decided the quickest way to finish my bachelor's was to take up a heavy class load. In order to achieve this, I took 6 classes per semester. Those of you who are currently in school can imagine how busy my schedule was, but I was determined to finish my bachelor's in psychology. Soon after, I enrolled in the master's program for psychology at Adler University. My psychology degree, my master's in psychology, has an emphasis in military psychology. Over the course of my master's degree, I discovered industrial and organizational psychology. It is a discipline where psychology and the workplace collide. Excuse me while I switch out this slide so you all can see my awesome pictures. So for those who don't know what IO psychology is, or industrial and organizational psychology, I'm going to give you the exact definition from the APA. So the specialty of industrial and organizational psychology is the scientific study of human behavior in organizations and the workplace. The specialty focuses on deriving principles of individual, group, and organizational behavior, and applying this knowledge to the solution of problems at work. I have always been interested and invested in improving the human condition. I consider myself someone who is indefinitely looking for problems to tinker with and fix. Because of this trait, my passion is to help others. I get a great deal of satisfaction from knowing that someone's life has improved because of something that I was able to resolve for them. Prior to coming to the NIH, I worked with unaccompanied minors who traveled to the United States in search of better opportunities. The vast majority of these children came from Central and South America, so speaking Spanish with them helped them feel less alone. As a veteran, USA Jobs was a platform that I was well acquainted with, as it is well advertised in the veteran community, but I was in need of a workplace that really beckoned me. At that time, I was in a PhD program for industrial and organizational psychology and serving on the board of a nonprofit dedicated to helping women veterans receive specialized services. The 2 organizations that most appealed to me were SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and of course the NIH. I felt that these 2 organizations were most in line with my future goals and the future research that I wished to engage in. Specifically, my goals are to probe into the experiences of employees from marginalized communities and put words to their experiences. I especially want to contribute to the existing literature on these unique workplace experiences, as there's very little literature on some of these concepts like sense of belonging. I currently work at I work in EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and I specifically manage the Hispanic and Latinx employment portfolio. In this role, I get to hear the experiences of Latinos in the workplace and look deeper into systemic challenges that my community is currently facing. Looking at ways to improve the experiences of Latinos at NIH is why I show up every morning, more energized than ever to tackle these issues. I get to be the communicator between the people and leadership, never hesitating to share challenges with my leadership because there's nothing that I love more than to fix a problem. My education has proven useful in this current role, as a foundation of both my master's degree and my PhD are grounded in DEIA principles, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility principles, and education, and an unapologetic pursuit of social justice. Let's discuss some resources that I feel benefited me and can also help you out. Let me just change this slide real quick and I will get to the resources. For starters, I benefited from the GI Bill. The GI Bill paid for my entire undergraduate degree. I also, while I was using the GI Bill, received housing to help me with my expenses as I was primarily a student. There are also other benefits here at NIH that you can take advantage of. For example, if you're a veteran, you can actually buy your time back, and that time is credited to your civilian retirement. I'm going to just go over these resources quickly because I don't want to take up any more time, but I will drop all of these resources in the chat. Many of you know there's a student loan repayment program here at the NIH. I plan on taking advantage of this resource. There are specific jobs that are open to veterans with disabilities. These jobs have something called veterans preference. What is veterans preference? Veterans preference gives eligible veterans preference in appointment over many other applicants. Veterans preference applies to all new appointments in the competitive service and many in the accepted service. Veterans preference does not guarantee that the veteran will get the job, and it does not apply to internal agency actions like promotions, transfers, and reassignments, and actually also reinstatements. So when agencies use, in the competitive service, when agencies use a numerical rating and ranking system to determine the best qualified applicants for a position, an additional 5 or 10 points are added to the eligible veteran. So lastly, I believe that everyone should be equipped with how to draft a federal resume, how to interview for federal jobs, and how to interview for how to go into a panel interview. These can be extremely intimidating, and I think that we should aggressively work to demystify these processes for the general public. I will also be dropping these resources that I have acquired over the course of my time at NIH that I think could be especially beneficial to you. Thank you all. I will see you in the Q&A.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sitting through the webinar with us, hearing everyone's stories. So I will share this slide and this last image. It's actually art from Claudia's mom. So I'll just stop sharing. You'll see all of us. And then we're going to start with a few questions that were actually sent in. And if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And we'll try to get to those if we have the time. So the first question I will take, it's actually, I have been applying nonstop for jobs and have yet to get an interview. What was your approach to finding a job or getting a federal position?
Did they freeze?
Yeah, I think Alva is frozen.
I think we can take on another question until she returns.
Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to tackle one. We were asked if there are any organizations like affinity groups, ERGs, organizations that can benefit that currently exist. And I wanted to share HEO, Hispanic Employment Organization. That is there is a chapter here at NIH. I'm happy to share that. I'm actually currently working on reinvigorating that ERG and really rallying some energy around it so that we can get up and running.
Thanks, Patricia. I think our internet crashed in our building. So everyone that's connected to the NIH network just lost connection. Okay. Yeah. So my apologies. So the biggest thing I could say is I recommend being patient. Being patient and persistent through the process. So had I given up the first time I got a rejection, I wouldn't be where I am today. So at the end of the day, I just recommend you not getting discouraged when you get one rejection, because the funny thing is I actually got the position as a health program specialist. And then as I'm doing my orientation and doing all the introduction paperwork, I get a rejection for the same exact position, saying that I didn't qualify. So it all comes down to who gets your application, whether that particular person thinks that you're qualified, and whether that person thinks that you would be a good fit for their team. So just because you're not a good fit for one team doesn't mean you're not a good fit for another. So don't get discouraged. Keep applying is the best advice I could give. And like Patricia said, we'll be sharing resources. Properly written resume, federal resume at that, is a big thing. So feel free to take advantage of all the resources that we're going to provide. So the next question will be Patricia, that will be taking this one up. Are there any working groups for Hispanic and or Latinx employees on campus?
Thanks, Alva. So while you all were gone, I kind of addressed that, but I'm happy to just kind of that's okay. I'm happy to reinforce because there's an HEO at the HHS level. I'm currently working with the chair of that HEO to get all of the different chapters, HEO chapters across all the operating divisions reinvigorated and, you know, just re-energized. So I'm currently looking for individuals who are interested in joining affinity groups and ERGs to really get our NIH one started. I think it's been dormant for like the last couple of years. I would love to see this HEO up and running. I think that getting new people into it would really just re-energize our community. One of the things that I aim to do as a practitioner is develop a strong community of Latinos here at NIH. I've shared that in the chat and I'm happy to answer any more questions. Please reach out to me. I'll drop my email.
All right, thanks, Patricia. The next one will be taken by Eunice. How did you find out or get funding being an international student? I know you kind of answered some of this, but feel free.
Yeah, I'm going to share actually in the chat some web pages. So there are some scholarships, for example, for Europe. I know about Banco Santander gives to Latin American students either to do some short term research internships when you're doing your PhD, or for PhD students. I had a Banco Santander scholarship during my PhD. There's also Fundación Carolina for Spain, and the Fulbright scholarships that are for the US to either come as a PhD student or also as a postdoctoral fellow. In addition, well, the one for that I shared, the Pew Latin American Fellowship for Postdoctoral trainees. So I can share some of those and also a couple more for Europe in the chat. Thank you.
Gracias, Eunice. The next one will be taken by Claudia. If you have also worked in industry and or academia, how is working at NIH different or similar?
I think in terms of similarities, you have, there's a lot of collaboration, not just within the institutes, but with other government agencies. So people are excited about science and people are excited about sharing knowledge. In terms of differences, I think the main difference is that when you're doing research, you are the expert on that little thing that you're studying. While at NIH, you get to see all the cool science that other people are doing, but you are not the expert anymore. They're very different, even though they're very similar at the same time. There's a lot of more administrative workload with NIH, but there's this feeling of you want to help the researchers, and there's a lot of interest on making sure that they succeed in their research.
All right, thank you, Claudia. There's a couple of questions that have been answered live in the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to field any questions or send in any questions in the chat. Any of the speakers want to address something? If not, I'll hand it over to Anna.
Right, thank you all so much. This has been an amazing session. We are truly so honored at NINDS and at NIH to have H.O.L.A and this whole community. I want to give a really big shout out to Alva and Claudia for putting together this webinar. It took a lot of work, and really huge thanks to all of the panelists for being vulnerable and sharing your amazing stories with us. For everyone to benefit. So with that, I would like to close the webinar. I will just say that, again, we are going to share all of these amazing resources from the chat, from the slides, from everywhere. We'll be sharing this all with you. It'll be recorded, it'll be posted on our website, and you'll get an email probably within the week, so look out for that. I really do hope that you stay connected with us. The NINDS Office of Programs to Enhance Neuroscience Workforce Diversity puts together events like this all the time. We have our ongoing open stage webinar, and to stay connected with us, just subscribe to our listserv. You can subscribe on the right-hand side of that link that I just posted. So with that, a huge thanks again, and we hope you have a wonderful Hispanic Heritage Month. See you next time. Bye.